Her Majesty the Queen has asked me to form a new government, and I have accepted.
I think when he called the referendum, it didn't seem such a big gamble, to be honest. I think he thought that the weight of the economic argument would overcome any of the arguments that the Leave campaign might be able to mount against him. But I don't think he bargained on quite how important the immigration argument would be.
Good morning.
I think if Mr Cameron doesn't win this referendum, he is going to go down as the Prime Minister, clearly, who took us out of Europe, but he's also, I think, going to lose his job. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for someone who fronted the Remain campaign and said some of the things that he said about other politicians and about the disaster that Brexit would be to carry on as Prime Minister. You know, if in the next week the Remain campaign can actually really do something. Well, I mean, I think all Prime Ministers, especially when they know they're coming to the end of their term, think about their legacy. Mr Cameron would have hoped that his legacy would have been a slow recovery from the awful situation that the economy got into before 2010, and perhaps gay marriage. I think gay marriage will still be an important one, but unfortunately I think he's going to be remembered in history and in the history books as the Prime Minister who took us out of Europe.
I've just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet in which I updated them on the special status we have secured for Britain. And the Cabinet agreed that the government's position will be to recommend that Britain remains in a reformed European Union. Thank you very much indeed.
Basically, there are 3 million jobs in our country that are dependent in some way on trade with the single market. Now, I don't argue all those jobs would go, but if we restrict our trade with the single market, clearly they're going to be affected.
I think he's actually been pretty stunned by the extent, by the strength of the Leave cause. I think the golden rule is never hold a referendum unless you're confident of winning it, and I think he thought that the moderate voices would prevail by some distance, but that's not the way the polls are suggesting it's going to go. Well, I think he's had a big shock. A few months ago, I imagine he was sitting there thinking, well, I can leave serenely, having won 2 general elections and 3 referendums, and that's a pretty good record for any Prime Minister. Suddenly, though, things are looking very different. I don't think he's ever wanted to leave the EU. I don't think he's a real Eurosceptic at all, although he's claiming to be. And I think if we do leave, I think he will be looking back and thinking, you know, we will have left the EU almost by accident, and that's a huge mark against him. And I think he will find that quite a hard cross to bear. I think there are a great many people in the Tory party who think this referendum has been a big mistake, and while he will legitimately, I suppose, be able to claim some sort of vindication for his choice to hold a referendum, and the issue has been ventilated and presumably it'll be off the agenda for a good while in the eyes of at least most of the party, I think a lot of people will be saying, okay, he's had his time, that's enough.
The shock to our economy after leaving Europe would tip the country into recession. This could be, for the first time in history, a recession brought on ourselves. As I stand here in B&Q, it would be a DIY recession. And it really matters to everyone. This country, but above all, the people of Britain have worked incredibly hard